Hi, everybody. Welcome to this first webinar of AI Singapore this year on AI Clinic and AI Discovery. So glad to have everybody here. We will start promptly at 12 o'clock. We won't wait for those who are late. So before I start, let me just give a quick self-introduction. So my name is Tempo. I'm the current assistant head of AI standards at AI Singapore. So previously, I was from a non-IT background. So I joined AI Singapore under the AI apprenticeship program. And afterwards, here I am. I joined AI Singapore full-time as an assistant head here. Right. So later on, I'll be sharing more about types of programs that AI Singapore has. Okay. So before we start, let me just do a quick recap of the objectives of this webinar. Right. So the purpose of this webinar is for us to share how the programs that I've created, especially on AI Clinic and AI Discovery, can help companies accelerate their AI adoptions, and do it through multiple ways. First, we help companies to get inspired on relevant AI use cases specific to the functions and industry. We also help companies to ideate potential use cases that they can develop internally. And of course, for those companies who wish to embark further into developing their own internal AI capabilities or to collaborate with AI Singapore to work on AI projects, we have programs to support them as well. Okay, so before I go on further, let me just invite Lawrence Liu to give a short welcome address. Lawrence, please.
Thanks, Tempo. Welcome everyone, and I'd like to especially thank William from UPasso for joining us to share his experience working with AI Singapore. I won't take too much time. Just want to give a brief overview and why this session is especially important and relevant. When AI Singapore started, one of the first programs we had was the 100 experiments. Now that's an expensive program to participate with AI Singapore, right? That's like 180, 250K co-investment required. So it was targeted really for MNCs, GLCs, large enterprises, and we do have SMEs and startups that participate in the 100E with us. But we also realized that we need to reach out to the SMEs. But today we have decided that the term SME actually may not be a good way to categorize companies that we want to reach, to get them on board the AI journey, like what Tempo was talking about. So instead of that, internally we are now using terms like whether the enterprise, so we rate enterprise in terms of AI maturity, whether are they a novice, whether are they AI aware, whether are they AI competent or AI proficient. Now the exact terms and how we define them, Tempo will explain further in this presentation. So this AI Clinic and AI Discovery was really created, right, to solve some of these issues that we encountered while trying to get companies to adopt AI. So along the way, we introduced AI Clinics, AI Discovery, and many other programs. So I hope today's session will give you an idea of what the clinics and the discovery process is. And if there's anyone with any other ideas how we can help you to get started on this AI journey, we are more than we'll welcome your input. Thanks. Back to you, Tempo.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Right, so this will be the agenda of the rest of this webinar. First, I'll just briefly go through who is AI Singapore, because I'm sure not everyone here heard of AI Singapore. Next, I'll just go through what are the current challenges that we see when companies want to embark on AI journeys. So then we'll introduce how AI Clinic and AI Discovery can help support companies in their effort. And of course, we have sharing by UPasso. So we have done a project UPasso He'll be sharing with us his experience, and we'll end off with a Q&A. So anytime for any questions, feel free to post it in the Q&A chat. Later on, I'll be answering them. Okay. So introduction to AI Singapore. So AI Singapore, we started in 2017, and our mission is really to anchor deep national capabilities, right, and help create AI impact in Singapore. So we do this through multiple ways, right? So we grow local talents, so have a talents development programs. We also help to build an AI ecosystem in Singapore in order to put Singapore on the world map. Right. So we are funded by the NRF, National Research Foundation, and our office is at NUS. Right? And we have multiple program coordinating agencies, as you can see on the left. And we also work across different universities as well on the right. So this gives a very good advantage, because at any point of time, if there's any projects or technical expertise that is beyond AI Singapore, we can reach out to our network to get the help needed to support the companies in doing the AI projects. Okay, so AI Singapore, we have four main activities. First, we have the AI research. So this pillar focus more on developing the latest research algorithms to serve and a specific areas of interest identified. Right? We also have our AI technology. So under AI technology, we solve national grand challenges. So the most recent one that we have is the AI in healthcare grand challenge. Right? And today I'll be just focusing on these two. AI innovation, AI makerspace. So this is where I'm from. So these two pillars, what we do is that we go out to the industry and help companies to accelerate their AI adoptions. Right? And later on, I'll be going through with you what are some of the programs under some of this pillar and how we can help you with that. Okay, so overview of AI Singapore activities, right? So again, we are agnostic to company size, right? Be it startups, SMEs, large local enterprise, or MNCs, right? As soon as the company wants to embark on the AI journey and they need help, AI Singapore will be there for them. Right? So we do it through multiple ways. We have a talent development programs if they wish to increase their employees' AI literacy. We have things like 100 experiments, which I'll go through later on, to collaborate with the companies over 9 or 18 months to help them develop an AI model for their companies. Okay. So right now, I just set the overall context of why we have created AI Clinic, AI Discovery, and those programs that I mentioned earlier on. Okay. So through our experience in doing AI projects with companies, we realized that there are a few top challenges that companies face when they want to embark on AI journey. And this is consistent with some of the research article you read out there. So first, right, highlighted in the blue is data scope or quality, skills or staff, understanding AI benefits and use cases, measuring the value, and etc. So although there are multiple challenges faced, right, we can briefly categorize them into 5 main areas. The first thing is, how do we find out the latest AI application specific to my industry or function? Right? Because companies also come to us and say, how can we get started in AI at minimum cost and risk? Because not every companies can afford to take the risk or the investment required to get started in AI. Okay. Some companies also come to us and say, okay, I'm interested in doing an AI projects, but there are so many use cases, and for AI, there's so much potential. How do I ideate and identify use cases that my organization should pursue? Right? And lastly, how can I build my organizational AI capabilities if they wish to deepen their employee skills? Okay, so this is where we come up with multiple programs to address each of the concerns that companies surface to us, right? To find out latest AI applications specific to the industry and functions, we have AI Clinic, which I will go through later on. To help companies get started in AI at minimum cost and risk, we have developed this thing called AI bricks. So these are free open source AI solutions that we have created. So AI clinics and AI bricks go hand in hand, which I'll go through later on as well. Lastly, for the ideation and the prioritization of use cases, this is where AI discovery will come in to help the company to scope out good use cases, good feasible use cases that they can invest in and get started in their AI journey. And of course, for any organizations who require AI engineering expertise, we have the 100 experiments along with our AI apprenticeship programs and the AI data apprenticeship program, which I'll go through later on. Okay, so first, intro to AI clinic. So what is AI clinic and how do we go about doing that? Okay, so on a high level, this is the process of AI clinic. What we do is that based on our experience or based on requests that we receive from our clients or industry, we will try to identify a team or a specific industry or a functions that we see that have a strong demand for AI. So it could be accountancy, maritime, etc. So once we have identified a specific sectors, functions, or industry, we will then organize an AI clinic that is very specific to the sectors, for example, maritime that you want to target. What we'll do then is that we'll invite participants from within the same sectors or industry, then down to have roundtable discussions. So in the roundtable discussion, what we'll do is that we'll share the latest AI applications specific to the industry. And the reason why I keep mentioning specific to the industry or function is because what we realize is that a lot of times in the past, companies has been saying that it's good to share AI use cases, but these are all very high level and generic stuff. It is not possible for my companies to implement them. So that's why for our AI clinic, we will tailor it specific to the functions. So after the participants attend our AI clinic, they'll go back with a list of potential solutions that they could implement within their sectors that's relevant to them. Right, and of course, during the roundtable discussion, the AI Singapore consultants will be there as well to facilitate discussions. Right, so sometimes if companies or participants have any questions they want to ask, we'll be there to address them, and we could give some advice as well. And at the same time, we also share what are the use cases and applications that's relevant to the industry. Okay, so one of the examples that we have done is this AI clinic for maritime industry. So those who are interested, later on, I can share the links with you after the workshop, no issues. So this is available on YouTube. So we have done an AI clinic specific for the maritime industry. So in the AI clinic, we shared multiple use cases that anyone in the maritime industry will find relevant and could implement them internally. Okay. So earlier I mentioned about AI bricks and AI clinic. So how do these two gel together? Right? What we realize is that in a lot of the industry engagement or a lot of the companies we've spoken with, a lot of the use cases are not unique. They are in fact common use cases across industry. One such use cases is demand forecasting. A demand forecasting within a specific sector, let's say it could be sales. It's very similar to a demand forecasting AI model in another functions, let's say inventory, right? Even though the data might be slightly different, but the approach and the methodology in terms of AI modeling is somewhat similar. Right. So what we do is that based on our insights from the industry engagement, based on what companies have been coming to us, what we do is that we identify a common denominator across the use cases. This is where we will come in with our AI expertise. We develop AI solutions specific for the industry. Right. So for example, one of the AI brick that we have developed is this RPA, robotic process automation tool called Tech UI. So this is a free open source AI bricks that we have developed for the industry. And you have multiple use cases in the libraries which you can check by Googling for AI Singapore website and search for Tech UI. Right? So this is one such example of how we as AI Singapore can come out with a common use cases that cut across the industry, okay, to help companies get started in AI. Okay, and how do we see companies use the AI Singapore AI bricks, right? It might sound scary, right? You might say, hey, Tempo, it's good that AI Singapore have these AI bricks, but I don't know how to use it within my organizations or deploy it to my stakeholders internally. So what we envision is this, right? Based on what we collected from the industry or what organizations share with us, we will identify a common denominator or common use cases. Once that is done, what we'll do is that we develop an AI solution and open source it, right? Free AI solutions, put it on the internet. So companies who are more advanced, so when I say advanced, meaning that I'm talking about companies who are like AI competent or AI proficient level. So how we group these companies is that, these companies typically will have internal capabilities in terms of software engineering, in terms of IT services. So for those companies who are very strong internally, let's say for AI competent and AI proficient companies, right? They can take our model and deploy it internally. Right? Otherwise, for companies who lacks the internal IT capabilities, such as AI novice and AI aware companies. So for these companies, typically they might or might not have IT capabilities internally, and maybe their AI knowledge might be lacking as well. So for these companies, what they can do then is that they can engage IT service providers, right, system integrators, to help to bring the model and integrate that into the existing workflows. Right? So when the user log in on their desktop, everything will be integrated as a solution, right? And they can use it to achieve their business objective. Right? So this is how AI Clinic and AI Bricks go hand in hand. Right? Through the AI Clinic, we help companies to get updated on what's the latest applications in the industry. And if there's any use cases that we see that keep reoccurring from our conversations with the industry, we will use our AI engineering expertise to develop a free solutions for the industry to adopt. Right? And different companies with different AI capabilities, they can go through different routes to adopt these AI solutions that we have created. Okay. So that is for AI Clinic and AI Bricks. Next, I go to AI Discovery. Right? So you can imagine that for companies who want to get started in AI quickly and don't want to spend too much, don't want to risk a lot of their capitals or time in adopting AI, they can attend an AI Clinic, use our AI Bricks, and get started in AI. But how about for those companies who are stronger in terms of their IT capabilities, meaning, let's say, for example, for AI proficient companies, these are companies usually they have their in-house AI engineering capabilities, for instance, or they have very strong software engineering capabilities in-house. And they would embark on something that's more customized, something that's more unique, or something that is very specific to their business needs. But maybe they don't know how to ideate good use cases to proceed forward. So this is where AI Discovery can help. Okay. So through our multiple engagements with companies across sectors, across different sizes, what we realize is that there are three main mistakes that companies made when they try to ideate AI use cases. First is that they didn't minimize grouping. So usually how the brainstorming works is that they gather several stakeholders in a same room and start to brainstorm about use cases, right? But what we realize is that a lot of the time, the most highly paid person in the room or the most senior person in the room, once they mention about use cases, the rest of the room will rapidly converge towards that use cases. Right? So end up, there's not much white space ideation around what could be possible. And worse still, right? A lot of the time, the person who might be the most vocal or the most extrovert who share the ideas, their use cases that they share might not be the right use cases to pursue. Right? So this is the first mistakes that we see. The second mistake that we see is that the organization failed to align teams, right? So what happens is that for some of the organizations that I work with, halfway through the AI model development, someone somewhere in the company will say, hey, have you thought about this? Or have you thought about that? Have you considered this? This will happen if the stakeholders are not aligned when they are trying to identify and prioritize the use cases, right? The last thing anybody wants is that halfway through the AI model development, somebody say, have you thought about this? Then you know that some within the companies are not aligned in terms of the use cases to pursue. And the last thing that we all want is to abandon the projects and do a U-turn to restart from fresh, right? This will be costly and waste a lot of time, right? And lastly, the third most important point is they didn't engage facilitator with AI expertise, right? So why do I call this out, right? AI is very different from traditional software. For traditional software, it's very easy to come up with a specific requirement. Let's say, for instance, I want the app to be able to store photos, to be able to have a search bar to search through photos, for instance, right? So these are this deterministic approach where you could come up with right at the start, right? Because software engineering, you can give a request that can build a function out of it. But for AI modeling, it's a totally opposite spectrum, right? For AI use cases, a lot of the time it's dependent on data. So whether a use case is doable is dependent on whether there is good, sufficient quality data to begin with. Okay? And AI is probabilistic in nature. It's not as easy as putting a search bar and just code it out. AI learns from data, and without a good data on hand, the AI model cannot be developed. Right? So that is where if the facilitator is not well versed in AI, to understand the technical challenges or the potential approach that an organization can take to ID the AI use cases, right? Then later on, when they proceed to do projects, that might be a few challenges down the road. Right? So what we have done is that under AI Discovery, we took the inspiration from Design Spree. So Design Spree is not new. This is originated from Google Venture, and they help Google startups under their incubation arms to ideate use cases fast and test them out. Okay, but this process is more for software engineering. Okay, what we then do is that based on this this inspiration that we have, we separate out the different stages into three main areas. First, we have the ideation. So this is for companies who are interested in AI, but they are unsure where to get started. Right? Next, we have the prioritization. This is where the companies have use cases identified, but they need help in prioritizing which one should they pursue first. And at the last stage, right, once they have prioritized the use cases, if they lack internal capabilities to develop AI models, AI Singapore have these 100 experiments to help them with that, which I'll go through in details later on. Okay, so first, AI Discovery Ideation. How this is done. This is a high-level overview of how the workshop is conducted. So basically, in short, first, I will be one of the main facilitator in the workshop. So how this workshop is done is that every participants, right, stakeholders, usually 4 to 7 of them in a room, will share their problem statements or the challenges to each other. Let's say, for example, if this organization is an education organization, right, in the space of training people, training institutions, right? So one of the problem statements that I face is that someone mentioned students are dropping out of courses due to loss of interest. Right? So this problem statement is very hard to address. Right? It's just a problem statement. So what we'll do is that we'll convert the problem statements into an opportunity areas. So for instance, right, someone within the participants will write, okay, based on what the colleague mentioned. So then this, one of them might write this, right? How might we recommend suitable courses to students? So this will help to reframe the problem statements into an opportunity areas that the organization can pursue and address. Okay, so once that is done, we have defining goals and identify blockers. So these two will help the stakeholders within the room to align with internally on what they envisions the organizations to become once the solution or the challenges is solved, right? We also want the participants to voice out the potential blockers that they think might derail the entire projects, right? So things like, can we upgrade our IT infrastructure to be AI ready? Things like that, right? So this will be some of the potential blockers we want the participants to highlight upfront, right? So hopefully through this, there won't be anyone who come to you and say, have you thought about this halfway through the projects, right? So this last thing that we want. And the last thing is that we want the participants to search for inspiration to solve similar challenges. So a lot of the time, whatever problems that they have, that could be another similar applications within the same industry or across industry. So for instance, in the case of the airport conveyor belt, the luggage conveyor belt, right? The inspiration came from this engineer who visited a Japanese sushi restaurants and then see this sushi on this restaurant's conveyor belt. And with this inspiration, he applied it to the airport context, right? For the luggage conveyor belt. So similarly, right, a lot of times, a lot of the use cases, they could have similar applications out there, be it in the same industry or across the industry. We want the participants to go and find out, is there any similar applications? Right? And a good thing about this is that, right, a lot of the time when you share ideas, it's not visible, it's abstract, right? A recommendation engine is abstract. But once the participants can show other people how might a solution look like, they become more concrete. And when the project goes to the development stage, the AI engineers can look at the solutions and try to understand, the key ideas behind the solution. How should the solution functions look or even feel to the stakeholders, right? So at the end of this AI ideation workshop, we have these examples being identified. Right? Let's say, for example, the opportunity areas identified is these three, like how might we identify skills that in demand by the industry, how might we recommend courses, we have the goal, we have the blockers, but things like, can we attract and hire the right lecturers to teach new courses? And the key ideas to explore, let's say from LinkedIn, they have this job posting to identify in-demand skills, right? So these are the key ideas that people can explore, right? So these are the artifacts at the end of the ideations. This is just high-level overview. I won't go through the details. For any companies who wish to engage AS Singapore to run an AI ideation workshop with you, feel free to let us know. Okay. So at the next stage, this is where we come to prioritization. So once you have a use cases, right, a list of them, how should you go about developing them or even prioritizing them to develop into AI use cases? Okay. So this is where a prioritization workshop comes in, right? So for instance, right, one of the use cases identified is how might we recommend suitable courses to students? So this is an opportunity areas that the organizations has identified. So take note, these opportunity areas is not created by the AI facilitator, which is me, right? I'm there to facilitate and advise. These use cases or opportunity areas comes from the participants themselves, right? So the participants will be brainstorming to identify such opportunity areas. So this will be relevant to the organizations. So before we proceed forward, what we will do is that the organization will share a sample data set with us, right? Anonymized. We don't need to know the secrets of the business or how much money is the company making. All we need to know is whether or not the company has sufficient good quality data to solve the opportunity areas identified. Right. So, like I mentioned earlier, software engineering is very deterministic. You can say you want a website, you want a search box, and you have it. But for AI itself, it learns from data. Without good quality data, the AI model won't be good, even if we use the best-in-class algorithms to develop the solutions. And that's the reason why, before we proceed forward, we'll do a data assessment by our AI engineers, right, to advise the companies how feasible this use cases is based on the data available. Okay, so once that is done, during the workshop, we will have a discussion with the stakeholders, right, to advise them the use case feasibility and the potential approach for AI model development, right? So let me give you an example, right? What do you mean by potential approach? So this is where our recommendation will come in, right? So for instance, to solve this opportunity area of recommending suitable courses to students, right, there might be a few approaches. The first is, can we use unsupervised learning to group similar students together? Right. So this is, for example, when the data set is unlabeled or there's no proper tagging of data in the data sets. So this is one approach as an AI engineers we could take to solve the opportunity area. Another approach is, right, can do a supervised learning to recommend courses based on student profiles. So let's say, for example, in the data set, we realize that, hey, actually there's some data sets or data columns that is related to the students' personalities or whatever there is, right? And that can give an indication of whether they're suitable for a specific course or not. Let's say maybe more outgoing students will be more suitable for sales or marketing, for instance, right? Or it's simply not feasible to do it due to poor quality data. Right, so these are the discussions that we're going to have with the organizations before we embark on the projects, right? Because if we identify the wrong approach, right, then when we do the AI modeling, at the outcome of it, the data, the model won't be suitable to fit into the organization objective, right? So should we take an unsupervised approach? Should we take a supervised approach? What might be the downside? Or how long might it take to develop the AI solutions given the current best-in-class industry solutions we have out there? So these are the discussions that we're going to have with the organization. So at the end of it, at the end of prioritization, what we will have is these three like use cases that is being mapped onto this importance and feasibility chart. So the business will advise us, if this particular use cases is solved, how much value it will bring to the organization in terms of, let's say, it could be profit, it could be productivity, or whatever there is, right? So the organizations will let us know, okay, on the y-axis, importance on the business value, where should it be? AI Singapore engineers will advise the organization on the x-axis, right, how feasible each use cases is based on the data that's available, the current best-in-class algorithms, right, and the technical challenges that might come into play when a specific use cases is developed, right? So with this prioritization metrics done, the organizations can go back and present it to the organization, say, okay, we have done an ideation, these are 3 use cases, and through our discussion with the AI engineers, these are the ranking of the use cases that you should pursue. So let's pursue the top right-hand corner use cases, right? So in this way, we help the organizations to really identify and prioritize use cases for AI development. Okay, and some examples of the AI discovery which are done by us. I can only show you the picture. I can't name the companies due to NDA. So on the top left, right, there's a education institute who came to us, right, and try to find out how could they implement AI internally. Right in the middle, we have this like retail this MNCs that is responsible for assembling car parts, right? So how would they implement AI internally as well? So of course, the top right, this is where there's a logistic company, and you might guess it, right? We have a new pastor here with us today. So we've done an AI discovery with few pastor as well on helping them to implement AI internally, right? We also done things like for shipping companies and even for a dialysis company as well. You'd be surprised, right? Like even for healthcare, which is very specific and technical, we are able to help the companies to identify good AI use cases to implement internally as well. So it's not just restricted to sales and marketing, even something as technical as in the medical world, we are able to help as well. Okay, and of course, right, once you have a prioritization done, now you might ask, like, okay, all is good. Okay, right now I want to do AI projects. How do I get started? I don't have any AI engineers in place, or I don't have any capabilities in-house. So what we have is this thing called the 100 experiments. Right? Under the 100 experiments, there are two paths to take. One is the for research. So this is for a use cases which is so unique that there's no open source algorithms out there to solve it, for instance, right? So this will require 18 months collaboration between AI Singapore, a principal investigator from universities, and of course the organization itself. But what we have been seeing is that a lot of the use cases are in fact not that complex enough, right, to warrant, let's say, 18 months kind of research and a development effort. So what most companies will go under is this thing called the 100 experiment for industry. So under this program, what AI Singapore will do is that on the AI Singapore side, we have a project manager, AI engineers, and apprentices who are aspiring to become AI engineers will form a team and work together with the organizations over a 9 months period to develop an AI model for them. Right. So at the end of this 9 months, what the company will receive is AI minimum viable products, and of course, right, the apprentices through the program, they also graduate from the program. And if the organizations want to hire the apprentices who work on the project, they can do so as well, right? Since they are the one who have been working on the AI projects, and this will help to develop the organization AI capabilities. Right? The next question you might have in mind is, okay, it's good, no, it must be very expensive, right? Perhaps you have talked to a lot of the consulting companies or other AI vendors, right, who might charge you for 9 months project durations, right, maybe a few $100,000 or so, right? But under AI Singapore, with the fundings from the National Research Foundations, right, we are able to co-fund the projects, right? So in terms of the cash outlay for the AI for industry, you're looking at around $70,000 to do the projects, right? So this is just a pop-up figures. For any companies who are interested to find more about this, feel free to contact us. We can share with you the specific details of the commitment need to be pulled out by the organizations before we can work on these projects together. Okay, so some of the 100 experiments project that we have done with companies, right, is here, right? So let's say, for example, in the top left, right, we have done a project with HDB Estate Management Company. So it's on a predictive maintenance to help predict whether a leaf is likely to break down or not in the next 1 week or so. Right? So this will help to give some insights and allow the town council to take some preventive actions, right, before the leaf breakdown. You also done a healthcare, so using AI to look at the wounds conditions to predict how likely the wounds is going to heal, or there'll be any complications that develop. Right. So these are some of the 100 experiments that we have done across different industry, from predictive maintenance of leaf all the way to healthcare. Even for this, right? So this is a project that we have done, right, with a global AMCs companies, and we help them to detect how likely these chips that they manufactured is likely to be returned to AI Singapore. Right, to return to IBM, sorry, not to AI Singapore, of course, return from their clients back to the companies who manufacture these chipsets, right? So this help to reduce the costs that they incur. So these are some of it, the things that we have done. with different companies in the industry. Right? So in summary, right? So this is the overview of what I have gone through earlier. Okay. On the left are all the challenges any company will face when they want to embark on their AI journey. Okay, be it understanding what is out there specific to the industry or functions, be it getting started in AI in a low risk and low cost manner, or even trying to identify use cases for AI adoption internally and developing the use cases into something that the organization want to pursue, all the way to building the organization AI capabilities. Right? We address every single challenges upfront through our specific programs that we have developed. Okay, AI Clinic, let me do a quick recap. It's a specific industry or a function team-based workshop where we invite companies to come down to have a roundtable discussion on what is possible within the functions and industry in terms of AI applications. And in the AI Clinic as well, we'll be sharing what are some of the AI bricks or open source solutions or free solution, if you call it that way, that can help the participants in the workshop, okay, to accelerate their AI adoptions, which they can implement in-house, okay, once they know how to use it. Okay, all the source code are available online. Okay. For companies who want something more customized, something more tailored, something that is more specific to the companies, we have AI Discovery. This is where we will go in, help the companies run through an ideation workshop to explore the white spaces on what is possible, right? And through that ideation workshop, right, by having the multiple stakeholders in the same room. So in the ideation workshop, there will be multiple voting rounds that we conduct, that we ask the stakeholders now to place their votes on which are the use cases they want to prioritize and which are the use cases they want to ignore. Okay? So through the ideation workshop, we help to build alignment within the different stakeholders in the same room. Right? So this will help avoid anybody coming back to you and say, have you thought about this or have you considered this? Once you have the use cases, we will come in as well to do a data assessment in terms of whether whatever data that the organization has, is it even ready to do AI projects, or what are the approaches that we could consider to solve a similar use cases, right? And right at the end, we have the 100 experiments, right, together with our apprenticeship program where we train people to become AI engineers. Right? For organizations who wish to deepen their AI capabilities, only help to build customized solutions for the companies, we are able to support them as well. Right? So I understand that in this webinar, there's a diverse range of audience and companies. So you might be asking, okay, so for these 5 workshops, how would you recommend me to proceed forward? So this is what I would recommend. If we are organizations looking to get started quickly with AI in a low cost, low risk manner, we have this thing called an AI Clinic, AI Bricks, which you can come in to get updated on the latest use cases, and we'll share what our AI solution is. Okay, with that, you can bring that in-house and deploy it internally, okay, at a low cost, low risk manner. Okay, so this is recommended for organizations in the AI aware and AI novice category. So these organizations typically doesn't have any internal strong AI capabilities, and they're just looking to get started in AI. Okay. For organizations who are more capable in terms of their AI capabilities or IT capabilities, then they can do this pathway. They can attend our AI Clinic, okay, and run through the AI Discovery Ideation If at the end of our AI ideation, the use cases that they identified are solvable by AI bricks, we will recommend it to them and let them deploy it internally. If there's any use cases which is very unique and there's no available solutions out there, okay, we can help them do a prioritizations. And lastly, through our 100 experiments, help them build the customized AI models for them to achieve their business objective. Okay, so this is how I would recommend companies to engage us through the different workshops that we have. Okay, so this is the overview of our programs. I will go through it, but most of them are just a 2 hours, 2.5 hours commitment, except for, of course, the 100 experiments, where this is a 9 or 18 months collaborations. If anyone interested, I can share more details on this. So at the end of this webinar, I'll be sending flyers to everyone who registered here, which will contain more information about these programs. Okay. So now, enough of me talking alone. I would like to invite William Ng, the COO of UPasso, to come this talk. So let me briefly introduce William. So William graduated from NUS with double majors, right? And he was managing logistics and supply chains on major offshore companies, offshore marine companies, right? And from there, he joined UPasso as the COO. Right now, UPasso is one of the largest on-demand delivery platform in Singapore. So he's responsible for growing new market segments and has expanded the operations to Malaysia, right? And through the fireside chat, you'll be able to understand how we run a workshop together and how has UPasso benefited from the collaboration with AI Singapore, right? So, so let me invite William. Hi, William.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, hey, William, thanks for your time in joining us in this webinar. Appreciate your time on this.
Yeah, and I appreciate everyone for staying here until lunch.
Yeah, so William, so before we start, right, could you just briefly explain to the audience what does UPasso do?
Okay. Actually, UPasso is an on-demand delivery platform. Different from typical logistic company in which we directly connect the pickup location to the delivery location without going through like a centralized sorting. As you know, many of you all know, be it Singpost or others, right, always go through like a pickup, which is the first mile, a centralized sorting, and then a last mile by batching the deliveries together for the final destination, which we call the last mile. For us, we directly collect the first mile to the last mile using a crowdsourced pool of drivers. Currently, we have about 12,000 drivers that registered with us and doing deliveries day to day.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Thanks, William. So, speaking on this, how do you come to know about AI Singapore and what makes you interested in collaborating with us?
Oh, okay. Actually, the first thing that we got interested with AI is actually through some of the reading. I was reading Master Algorithm, the book by Dominguez Pedro, and then when I get where can I find out more information? Then I was Googling and I realized that there was a in 2019. I remember that I went to Temasek Poly, in which AI Singapore was doing a number of outreach event where physical event is still possible. There's also a few hundred participants, very much like everyone here today on the digital platform. So I attended the seminar. I was very intrigued by the various tools and how AI Singapore could help us to embark on the AI journey. And subsequently, we contacted AI Singapore to understand a bit more about how can we really get involved, understanding our business model. Like what Tempo has mentioned, we send them over some of our data to let them have a look at whether are we even ready, on which type of program. And subsequently, we also even send our engineers on the AI for industry program. To get them, trained and certified in AI program. Actually, 2 of them have already graduated after about 12 months being on the training. Yeah. So at the height of the pandemic is when we pushed forward and went through the AI discovery session. So very different is because we couldn't do it physically, right? So we held a digital platform session. So I was really impressed with how AI Singapore came very prepared, even though it was this webinar sessions are pretty new with a number of tools to really help us focus on what would be these priorities for us to embark on, and even like areas like to avoid groupthink, the voting process was also anonymous, and everyone was given a small mascot icon, and you could do voting across your different segments. Because we got our team from the operations team, from the tech team, and also from the management team to come in, making sure that everyone have a stake in it, and no one person has a unfair share to really dominate the conversation. Yeah.
Glad that the AI Discovery program helped you to build alignments within different functions. That's great. So maybe I can share with the audience what was the AI project that we worked on together on that?
Yeah. So the AI project that we worked on was actually when the just what we mentioned about when we are doing point-to-point delivery, right? And during the pandemic, right? Actually we see a very huge growth of point-to-point, and because we deliver on the same day or even faster, typically within a couple of hours. But to achieve that, when you have a higher demand in terms of the delivery nodes as well as drivers, the number of points that you can connect to become really exponential. So we are one of the largest platform, and like on platforms like Shopee, we are doing all their same day deliveries. So it becomes very complex for us. Then we were thinking of the challenge that we had initially was how can the drivers do more deliveries to increase their capacity, right? Very much like just now the example of the how can why are students dropping out of the classes? This is a challenge, and then we look at what would be actually the solution, the recommendation. So we came on with a more narrow solution. Is actually how can we recommend drivers to do jobs that are more suitable for them. Then we came down to the project in which we are looking at how do we group the deliveries. Currently, our algorithm before the engagement with Air Singapore already grouped the deliveries based on delivery region or points. But we look at another side, which how can we also group the collection points? Because as the number of delivery grow, we need to first collect from someone, right? Like what I explained just now earlier on. After the collection, we need to do the delivery. So we also look at where are the collection points that are more effectively optimized, so that the drivers have more time, or actually users less time to complete the deliveries, compared to a very rule-based, which a lot of industry players are using. It's like rule-based is just based on, like, say, are you in a certain postal code? If our postal code is this 2 or 3 digits, it's being grouped together. But that's not good enough, right? Because it creates artificial boundaries around that, and some 2 locations may be very close to them. So we switch to using an AI model that uses a distance-based kind of measurement. If 2 points are within a certain distance, they are being grouped together for collection, and subsequently also grouped together for a delivery as well. Yeah, so that was the collaboration with AI Singapore.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for the kind words. So what are some of the improvement that you see for your business after you have introduced the AI model into your products?
Okay. So after the introduction, right? So we did some runs. We could see visible improvement in terms of the capacity improvement of the drivers. They could then pick up 2 nearby points delivering to a same region. That probably gave us about 20% improvement in terms of productivity of the drivers. And this is actually a very important part, because the drivers on our platforms are independent contractor, freelancers, right? So this increases their earning capacity, which then allows them to continue to participate in the platform to increase their earnings.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Great to know that the AI model help you improve the productivity internally in the organization, and help the freelance drivers to deliver more products, right? So I think this is also one of the areas that a lot of companies also wish to embark on. So especially in this special period, right, or even a post-normal, how can we actually help or stay competitive by using smarter solutions powered by AI to help to to really increase the productivity and the revenue of the companies, right? Because I think it's almost impossible or even very hard to ask the driver to work like 10 hours more or of 10 hours or 20 hours more to make up for the delivery, right? So there has to be a smarter way of grouping the collection and delivery and to optimize that, right? So that everybody will benefit, right? Both the drivers, freelance drivers, as well as you parcel itself. Right? Yeah. So maybe let's go to the last question, right? Before we end off the fireside chat, right? So what advice do you want to share with the rest of the SMEs audience in this webinar?
Okay, actually, I've given them a lot of the advice on how to get started already. I just want to share a bit on because many may think that now is the pandemic, it's not really a good time. Should they invest in this? So I would say there's no really good or bad times. You have to make the best out of the times where we are in right now. And AI Singapore actually make the solutions very accessible to everyone, and from the piecemeal solutions that you can embark on to really the bigger projects like 100E. You don't need to just straight away going into 100E, which actually is not recommended. Right? You should really go through about understanding solutions and quick wins that you could see the returns, which is applicable for us. Right. So once you see that actually by implementing such projects, you get quick wins and quick returns, it gives you the confidence to embark on a longer term project. Which we are looking at how to do things like optimizing the routes, developing even a recommendation engine for the drivers that you should, because you have taken on job ABC, you should actually take on job D as well, because you are in the best position to take this. But it gives a whole new definition of AI by working with AI Singapore. So AI, everyone knows stands for artificial intelligence, right? But by working with AI Singapore, you also bring AI to be accessible innovation for everyone. Yeah. So that I will leave everyone with this message.
Okay, thanks, William. Thanks for sharing. So again, right, just to recap, right, what William mentioned earlier, right, in the last questions, right. So AI Singapore really help to take an organization, right, from just thinking about doing AI all the way to actually doing AI. And through that process, we help you to minimize the risk through a proper process that we put in place, right, such as the ideation, the prioritization, to ensure that whatever projects that you embark on, there is AI engineers who have really looked through the use cases and looked through the data before we say that, okay, this is doable, right? Because otherwise, without this expertise to help, when you're halfway through the projects, right, you might realize that some of the use cases are not doable due to a lack of data, for instance, or this is not feasible due to the technical challenges you might incur. Right? So with that, thanks, William. Thanks for joining us in this fireside chat to share with everyone how was your experience in doing an AI project with AI Singapore, right? So again, for anyone interested in doing collection and delivery, please go to YouPass website and they're even featured on the news, right? You can Google for them, right? So they'll be interesting on what they are doing. Right? So with that, thanks, William. Thanks for your time. Thank you. So now, what's next? So after all the sharings, right, what we will do is that for AI Singapore side, we will send the AI Clinic, AI Discovery fact sheets by email to all participants. Of course, right, if you're interested, you can always contact us at AI Singapore if your organizations is interested in attending AI Clinic, AI Discovery, or just want to find out more about our programs. Right? Feel free to let us know. We'll be more than happy to guide you along. Okay. And with that, I have come to the end of my sharing. So right now, this is the Q&A section, right? So this is where I will look through the questions. Maybe I'll just put it to here so everybody can see. All right, so I'll just answer the questions from top to bottom. So please, if you have any questions which is unanswered, feel free to post it. This is the best time to clarify any doubts that you have. You can ask anything. It might not be specific to the clinics or the discovery, or just very generic questions that you have on your mind when you think about AI. I'll be more than happy to answer you. Okay. So great explanation. Okay, thanks. This session is recorded, so we'll be finding a way to share this. So definitely, we will get back to you on this. So thanks for the kind words. Okay, so on the second part here, are there any costs to the company during AI clinic, AI bricks, and AI discovery stages? Okay, for the AI clinic, right now, when we run it, there's no charge or cost incurred. So we invite companies to come down. We host roundtable discussions with the companies. So right now for AI clinic, there's no charge. For AI bricks, there's no charge as well if your organization has the capabilities to take the AI bricks and deploy it internally, right? So let's say, for example, if you are coming from organizations who have maybe capabilities which are not as strong in the IT area, right? Then you can always engage our partners, right? System integrators or IT solution providers to integrate that solutions into your companies for you, right? And for the AI discovery, as of this moment, there's no charges as well, because again, we are funded by the government, and we are a national program office set up to help companies embark on the AI journeys, right? So tentatively, there's no charges as well for the AI discovery. But feel free to engage us if you intend to do any of it. We will give you more details on that, right? Okay. How to participate in AI clinic? Okay, so for this, right, this is a both-way thing, because right now what we are doing right now is that we are trying to identify common needs within our industry or functions before we organize a team-based workshop. Let's say it could be AI clinic for accountancy or AI clinic for HR or sales and marketing, right? So it really depends on the demand out there and what we are seeing based on or hearing based on our discussion with the companies. So if you are interested in attending AI clinic, right, drop us an email. Let us know your industry or functions you're coming from and what are the things that you have in mind. So once you consolidated, let's say, some requirements or demands from industry, we'll do an AI workshop, AI clinic workshop for that specific industry or sectors, right? And how many people will be attending, right? This part, it depends. Of course, you want to have as many as possible, but within the current safety measures implemented by the government, right? And are they online? So based on the past AI clinics, we have done it online, but we are trying to move to a physical workshop when possible, because what we realize is that it's only through the physical workshop interactions, right? The discussions will be more fruitful for the organizations, right? Because if we have 10 participants who unmute themselves and share at the same time, right, the discussion will be a mess, right? So the best result is physical, but we are open to do it virtually as well. So physically preferred, but virtual possible. It really depends on whatever safety measures that the government have implemented and what we think is most suitable for that. Right? Okay. Thanks for comments. Hi, Mr. Tan. How about the productive failure from the story idea? Productive failure stories. Failure stories. Yes, we have a few, but they are not really failure stories. So through the AI discovery, right? Sometimes, right, the outcome of it is our recommendation to the company is, sorry, all your use cases identified, not doable due to poor data quality or poor data collection, or there's no data at all. So then what we recommend to the company is either you can explore other use cases which might not be the top business priority, which they might have data for, so that they can get started in AI. Or if the company stakeholders prefer, they might say, okay, thanks for helping us to identify the use cases. We will go back to start doing a proper data warehouse and to start treating data as our asset, right? Storing data properly, ensuring that they're error-free, things like that. So half a year, 1 year later, they can revisit the use cases And of course, we visit AI Singapore, and this is where we help them to do the AI model development. So again, the outcome of the discovery could be there's insufficient data to do any of the use cases. But at least, hey, please don't let this be a discouragement for the companies who has been through the ideation, right? Even though they don't have any data, at least they are made aware of what are the top key use cases that they can pursue as an organization. Once you have identified use cases, let's say, for example, you want to recommend music to the subscribers, for instance, right? But you realize that there's no proper customer database, there's no proper track history to track what the customers are playing or listening to. But at least you have the use cases identified. So with that use cases as a central beacon or the ready point, you can get all the different organizations or divisions within the company to come together, to collaborate, and start to treat data as an asset, right? So you might have the sales and marketing side starting to share their data and collecting proper customer records. You might have the team from the production side coming together to start to track what are the songs that the customers most listen to. So through the ideation, right, with the use cases as a ready point, you can get the entire organizations to come together to embark on this journey. Because otherwise, without a good use cases, then how are you going to go to the sales and marketing or the customer service department and say, okay, we need to start an AI projects? If they ask, okay, so what are the data do you need? I say, I don't know, but we need to start. Right? Then the discussion is going nowhere, right? But with use cases identified by the stakeholders, right, that will become a center point for the entire organizations to proceed forward together. Okay, so that will be the outcome of it. So I would say there's no really failure stories. That is whether an organization is ready or not for AI and how we can help them get started. Right? At least they can start to treat data as an asset and proceed forward from there. Okay, okay, sure. I can share that AI maritime industry links with you on after this. No problem. Okay, thank you. How do you ensure that we record quality data? Is there any metric standard follows? Yes. So on this side, it's a bit tricky because right, an organization can ask, there's so many data to collect, right? Everything, right? Temperature, humidity, customer data, even the steps that I take on a daily basis, right? So which are the data that is relevant to the use cases, right? So that's why for us to access which are the relevant data, we first need to determine what are the use cases first. So once you have the use cases, then you can identify what will be the relevant data needed to solve that use cases. Let's say, going back to the same example of music recommendations, right? Once you have identified that you want to recommend better music to customers, right? Then you can start to identify, okay, might need customer data. I might need data related to the track playlist, for example. So it's there, then you go deep into each of the data sets. Okay, let's me look at the customer data sets, right? What are the data that we have on a customer, right? Maybe to your horror, when you are doing the subscriptions sign up, right? You don't have the credit card, maybe the name, the profile, age, right? That's it, right? So maybe we say, hey, actually we have good quality data on the customer, but it's insufficient. Could we gather more things like their occupations, their educations, their gender, for instance? Then this way you enrich your data sets, right? And in terms of recording quality data, right? Again, it is use case dependent, right? And the best way to do that is that you have employees, depending on your organization size, right? Let's say if you're a big organizations, you could have a data governance employees or office there who look at ensuring data collected is stored properly in a data warehouse and the data is free of glaring errors, right? Things like that. So someone who look over the quality data the data quality that's collected. That is from a big organization's point of view. But let's say if your organization is small, perhaps you could look at whether within each department, how is data being collected, right? And when the data is collected, is there anyone ensuring that the data is of sufficient quality before they maybe key into the Google Sheet or upload into the data warehouse, if that's one, right? So a good way to ensure quality data is to treat data as an asset. And the best way to do this is to have someone, be a data steward or someone within organizations or department to look at, to ensure that the data collected is of sufficient standard. For metrics and standards, right, it depends because different data type might have different standards or metrics to follow. If you're interested, you can drop me an email on this and I can elaborate, have a further discussion with your organization or your department on this, right? Okay, so thanks. How should you initiate through an AI cleaning session first? So you can drop us an email, right? Depending on the stages, your organization status, right? Let's say, for example, if you realize that actually your organization is huge, there's a lot of AI capabilities in-house, and maybe the ideas you want to explore, you really have a use case in mind, but you want to explore whether there's other use cases, then maybe AI discovery will be the right route to take, then we can route you to that, right? But let's say if you come to us from a very small company point of view with maybe not as strong IT capabilities, then we can do an AI clinic with you to share the use cases and maybe what are the available solutions out there. And if you have an AI bricks, we can share that with you as well in the workshop. And from there, it's straight up to whether the path that your company want to take, right? Do you want to go proceed forward to do a customized model for your company, or whatever that we share in the AI clinic is sufficient, right? So drop us an email. We have a discussion further to understand the maturity, the AI, in terms of the AI capabilities of your organizations and the use case you have in mind. Then we'll be able to point you to the right programs that we have in-house, okay? Right. So I think that's all the questions that I received. If there's no further questions, then I have come to the end of my webinar to share how AI Singapore, through our programs such as AI Clinic and AI Discovery, can help your organizations to embark on the AI journey, okay, through our experience that we've engaged with multiple industry and companies or multiple use cases, right? We want to help every companies to get started in AI if they're ready for it, and help every companies to realize the potential of AI, right? So with that, I thank you for your time and for staying back. Right now, I'm 12 minutes over 1 p.m. So thanks again for your time here. And I wish you have a good weekend. Hope to see you in one of the sessions that I'll be doing in future. Okay, have a nice day. Goodbye.